Hi, this is Dr. Bill Davison here, chiropractor, osteopath and naturopath. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video on spiritual healing. Now, I realise that's can be a fairly controversial, even a diversive topic. So right at the outset, I just want to reassure you that I want to respect and recognize that we all have differences of beliefs, especially when it comes to the spiritual realm or belief in God. So I want to let you know I want to respect that, and I'll be as careful as I can with that. However, that's the topic of the subject. So hopefully this video will help you to make a decision as to whether or not what I have to offer you is going to be helpful to you. And I believe it will. Especially if you believe in God, despite what your different beliefs may be. I think you'll find it at least an interesting story. And just at the outset, I've been in practice for over 40 years, in 1977, and I've worked holistically. That means we treat the body and the mind, spiritually, meaning values. So the spirit does come into it, but in a very non-intrusive way. So I've always looked at individuals holistically, looked at their problems holistically, and also to try and solve those problems, to find out where the major causes are in their lifestyle and correct those. So we do a lot of work with, obviously, structure, being a chiropractor and osteopath. We do a lot of work with diet, nutrition, being a naturopath. We do a lot of work with emotions too, and often with emotions or mental issues, the spiritual side can come into it, which you'll see some examples of that later on. So my purpose in doing this video is to offer help to you at no charge, because of a lot of my experiences have helped me, and because of my belief in God. I believe that's what God wants me to do, is to help others, which, believe it or not, is one of the greatest joys and satisfaction you can have in your life. So that's another ulterior motive, that I get joy and benefit from seeing other people's lives change. So let me begin by giving you a little bit of history. Some of you may have heard this already, some of you may not, so I do need to cover it. But it's good revision, and it sets the foundation for what I want to share with you. So I've struggled with skin cancers all my life. The first time I had treatment for skin cancers was when I was in my early 30s, as best I remember. I had 6 skin cancers on my body at that stage that needed radiation. And then after the course of radiation, the doctor said, "Well, you've got more." And I thought, "Oh, this guy's just after my money." So I didn't go back, because I couldn't see them, and I weren't aware of them. So that was the start. Even then, I was getting more than average. So in probably about 10 years ago, I'd say, I'm guessing now, I had a problem with a bad skin cancer on my leg, which was a squamous cell carcinoma, which are worse than the BCCs. They grow quicker, they're more vicious. And I had a number of different surgical procedures on it, and it just kept growing back, and the pain was excruciating. Eventually, they did a skin graft on my leg, the size of a volleyball. If you cut it in half and drew a circle around the outside, it would be that big, the skin graft on my leg. So that kind of solved the problem. It does grow back a little bit, but I control that with other means. Then about 6 years ago, I developed, that was when I had the operation on the leg. I was also having a problem with my arm, a lot of pain, and the doctors did the, obviously, biopsy and scans, and said you have basal cell carcinoma inside your armpit. No point of entry, but inside the armpit. Very unusual. All the doctors look up in surprise when you tell them that, and you go back for subsequent visits. You have to have your arm off today. We booked you in to St. Vincent's to have the arm off, and I said, "Whoa," I went into shock, and I said, "Oh, I need time to think about this." So, "You won't have any time. If you're in too much pain, you need to act now." I said, "No, I said, "I can't do it now. It's too much for me. I need to think." I said, "Okay, we'll reschedule it for tomorrow." And I said, "No," I said, "I won't be ready by tomorrow either." So what I did, I tried for 12 months to save the arm, and the positive side was the cancer was shrinking, but it had done so much damage that the arm was useless. I just held it against my stomach with my other hand all the time, and the pain was unbearable. I was on the heaviest painkillers, and it was a nightmare of 12 months. So I had to eventually succumb. I had the arm removed, and that was obviously a nightmare. I was lying in hospital feeling not sorry for myself. It wasn't the loss of the arm. I was just feeling so ill, so much pain, so much nausea, eliminating black liquid from my bowels, and I just wanted to die. It was that bad. But I had quite a spiritual awakening from that. I learned a lot from it, and I moved on. That was about 5 years ago. Then last November, I developed a large tumour on my left ear and on my back, growing very rapidly. And by the time I got in for because I'm a public patient, by the time I got in for my scheduled operation, I was completely out to it. I didn't know where I was. I was just sleeping all the time. I was weak. I was dying because the tumor on my back was secreting poison into my system. That was basically shutting my organs down. Now, the doctors weren't sure of why I was so ill. They weren't 100% sure. And when I went into the operation, they were undecided whether or not they could save me. They thought, this guy's gone too far. We can't help him. But as I've revealed in a different video, that I had a lot of people praying for me, and I believe God intervened on my behalf, and the doctors decided to operate, and 3 days later I was right as rain. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I was feeling amazing. But physically, I was obviously weakened from my previous 6 weeks of inactivity and no eating. So it took me a while to build up my strength and get back to normal again. Okay, but at that time they said, we need to address all these other skin cancers on your body. And when I went into the dermatological department, they counted 48 skin cancers still on my body. Now, in fact, to tell you a secret, there was more than that, because I knew where some of them were that they didn't find. So there was at least 50 skin cancers still on my body after my major surgery in November, where I nearly died. So they started treating those, and I was having some burned off, and I was having some cut out, and some required skin grafts because they were so bad and so large, which is no fun, I can tell you. It's more painful where they take the graft than where they do the surgery. Anyway, I had this huge scar on my back from the tumour, which was about the size of a football, and that was interesting because the graft didn't heal properly, so they said we're going to have to do another graft. Yeah, or in addition to that one, because it's not taking. Anyway, I was able to get some spiritual help for that, and then the graft grew, and they didn't need to do another one. So that was a nice side effect. Then, in one of those 3 subsequent operations from November, one of them was a graft I did on my leg, and that was even worse than the previous 2. So my point that I'm getting at is, each time I have a procedure done, not every time, but sometimes, it's worse than the previous. There's more pain. So I had to be off my legs for couple of weeks. I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything, which was a nightmare in itself, but the pain was unbearable, and that was the hardest challenge so far. And then the tumours they took off in November in my ear and my back began to regrow very vigorously. Now, if the first one on my back nearly killed me, you imagine what I'm thinking. This one's growing back. What future do I have? So the doctors wouldn't operate again because there was too much damage from the first operation. They said, you're going to have radiation. That was about 7 weeks ago, and the radiation on my back wasn't a problem. I dealt with that. That was a drain. But the operation that's not the operation, but the radiation on my ear was absolute nightmares, like having a really, really bad toothache all the time. And again, I was on the heavy painkillers, my system shut down, couldn't eat, couldn't taste food, I constipated, and I just got worse and worse and worse. And I said to the doctors, hey, I can't do this anymore. I said, it's too much for me. I'm too overwhelmed by it. It's just I can't put up with it. And this experience up to that point had been worse than all the others that I'd had. A lot of people thinking having an arm off is a bad experience. That was nothing. Because for 4.5 weeks out of the 6 weeks scheduled treatment, I was just continuing to get worse. And I just thought, I can't cope with this. Again, as in previous cases, I just wanted to die. I thought, this is too much for me. It's not worth living. So in my normal routine, okay, I belong to a church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so, we study the scriptures. We believe with Latter-day Saints. We believe we're Christians. We study the Bible, etc., etc. So it's always been part of my life. So I've always tried to have God in my life, and I always tried to study the scriptures. So we were having a conference, a worldwide conference. We have them twice a year, and we have our leader of the church, which we call our prophet, a bit like the Pope, that he gives a main address twice a year. There are a lot of other speakers, and he does a couple of addresses, but he has his main one. In his main address, he talked about using faith to move mountains. Any mountain, no matter what it was in your life, any problem, any trouble, you could use faith to get rid of it. And I thought, well, I already know that. I've already tried that. This is not helping. He's my leader of my church saying to me this is what I should do. And I'm saying, yeah, that's great, but it hasn't worked. I've tried it. It hasn't worked. It doesn't offer any solutions. So a couple of days later, I had a change of attitude, and I thought, I'll go back and read the talk. I listened to it before. I'll go back and read it and study it more carefully, which is what I did. And of course, that's when it began to yield some fruit. As I changed my attitude, and as I looked deeper into it, and as I spent more time on it. And he mentioned a number of things, and one of the things is, number one, he said, you need to study more. I'm thinking, well, I always study. I've studied all my life. I've studied 2 professions. I read my scriptures every day. Even though I'm still working, I still keep learning. So why would that help? Anyway, I thought of 2 books that I have in my library. One was a book by an author from our church, and one was a book by a minister from a different church. And that book in my library, I picked up. Someone was throwing it away. I thought it was my son, but he said it wasn't him, but he might have forgotten. It was quite a while ago. So I picked it up and I thought, I might like to read that one time. It was A Ministry of Healing. It was a biography. It was by someone, I forget his name, Eves, and it was talking about an Anglican minister by the name of Jim Glennon. He's a canon. And I just felt prompted to read the book. Even though I thought, why would I want to read a book from a minister from a different church when I've got all my leaders in my church that I could get information from? But I was prompted to read it. Well, hey, lesson learned, that gave me my answers. Even though I was led to it by our leader, it was actually not a book by one of our leaders. It was a book by a different minister from a different church. And that gave me my answers. So there was immediate dramatic improvement once I started to apply the advice or the information that was in the book. Immediate. It's confession time now. When I'm going through really, really difficult periods in my life, when I'm in a lot of pain and suffering, it tends to affect my relationship with God, because I think, well, God, where are you? And I know a lot of people feel that way. They think, why does God allow so much suffering? If there is a God, why is the earth the way it is? And there are answers to those questions. But I was still affected by that, because in my pain and my extremity, I appeal to God, and I think, well, He doesn't seem to be hearing me, he doesn't seem to be listening. So I didn't feel his love for me as much as I should have or have had. And I didn't feel my love for him as much as I have or should have. And so our loving relationship, mine between God, was affected by that. So for whatever, and I think that happens to a lot of people. So hopefully, that rings a bell for you, that, here's someone in my situation that has the same struggles. And what the book did, it helped me to reestablish my relationship with God, because what Canon Jim Glennon advised, he said, don't keep your problem in front of you, put it behind you. Allow your problem, and I'm on a swivel chair, allow your problem to swivel you round so you face God, and make sure the problem is behind you. It's still there, but it's behind you. And by getting closer to God, that helps you and God to solve the problem. And that was, now most of you probably think, yeah, we know that, but that was pivotal. No pun intended. That was pivotal for me. That just reestablished my relationship with God, and my love for God and his love for me, and my gratitude went through the roof. It was amazing. It's one of the most sublime experiences, let me tell you. And I love my wife and I love my kids, let me tell you. One of the most sublime, and I love some people more than others. But this is one of the most sublime experiences you could ever have, honestly. And I've had it before, but it hasn't lasted. It's like I take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. I maintain some of it, but then when the crap hits the fan, as they say, it really challenges it, and the experience was absolutely out of this world. It was amazing. Would I say it was worthwhile going through, or what I went through for that? That's a good question. I have to think about that. Okay, but it was certainly a payoff. So mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I just felt amazing. Physically, there was an immediate, overnight improvement, 50%. Immediate. My pain levels went down dramatically. I was able to get off my painkillers. I was still getting pain. Now there's an important point to make here. I was still in the midst of the radiation. And so I'm just going to interject here myself. I checked with the doctors and I said, listen, with radiation, does it ever get better before it's finished? They said, no, never. I checked with the nurses. No, never. Because sometimes you get different views with nurses and doctors, I found that. And they said, no, because you're having treatment every day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks. It might ease a little bit at the weekend, but it just gets worse and worse because you're continually bombarding the skin and the area with X-rays, light or photons or whatever they're using, and it's going to continue to attack the tumour, but also the tissues around there, and you're going to continue to get the effects of radiation. Well, it was a nightmare. I was having so much pain. I had nausea, I had vomiting, as I think I already mentioned, so I won't go back through that again. But here I am at 4.5 weeks into my 6-week period of radiation, and I was feeling amazing. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I know you're thinking, this could be a coincidence, and of course it can. But what is the most likely possibility? That God has intervened, or it's coincidence? Come on, get real. So, well, anyway, for me, I'm going to give God the credit, because if I don't, well, I could miss out. All right, so the pain levels went down to 50%. I was able to get off the painkillers. Was I still having pain? Yes. Was I still getting severe attacks? Yes, but they weren't as long and I could manage them. What I did do, though, is I would take some painkillers, and I had to get off the Endor because that was like killing me. So I went on to Tamal, but I had to ask the doctors, would you believe, to put me on Tamal instead of Endor, because they just kept saying, no, they're all the same, they're all the same, they're all the same. But fortunately, fate, or God, came to the rescue, and my daughter, who has had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and some other friend of ours also reacted to the Endor and got really sick, and they put them on Tamal, and they were able to cope much better. And of course, my wife found that out, told me, and I said to the doctor, because I tell them, I'm a health professional, and I get a lot of respect for that. That's great, nothing wrong with that. So they treat you on a common level, common terms. So I just said, look, can I try Tamal instead of the Endor, because the Endor's killing me. I can't continue any longer. They said, sure, no problem. So I wrote my script out. So I was taking Tamal and Panadol before I went to the hospital, because the procedures they do, they put a device on you where your cancer is, and then that is very painful when they do that. So I was taking that as a precaution. Did I need to take it? I can't tell, because I didn't try it without. I just thought, no, I'll do that. So yes, I was still getting some pain, but it was much more manageable, and it was kind of offset by the other stuff. Now, that was just over a week ago, and I still haven't finished my radiation. I've still got 2 days to go as I'm recording this, and my pain level is now down to 25%. I'd say that because sometimes there's no pain there at all, most of the time. Sometimes there's minor pain, and sometimes, yes, it can still be triggered. It's like a really, really bad toothache that nothing seems to help, but things can make it worse. Cold, heat, movement, etc., going into your brain from the side of your head. So I still can get that, if I shower, if I get it too wet, or if I disturb it, or if I made the mistake of going, because I was feeling so much better last week. I thought I got to get in the seawater. I went for a swim, and the cold was aggravating a bit in the water. But when I got out, it was a cold day and it was windy. I tried to get in the sun to warm up, but the pain just kicked in really, really savage. I had painkillers with me just in case. Took them, tried to lay there in the sun to get warm. Nothing happened. I could barely make it back to the car. I live in Cronulla, so I drove down. So I could barely make it back to the car, and barely make it back home and get into bed and just lie there and try and recover. And I was an absolute mess for the rest of the day. So even though that was in my good 50%, it was just over a week ago when I went down. I thought, now obviously there's still triggers there, and that was the cold was a really, with the water and the cold, it was a really bad trigger. And so I've learned my lesson. I wanted to go yesterday, and I thought, no, won't do that, because it could still trigger it off. So look, I'm just being realistic. It's still there, but as long as I manage it, as long as I'm sensible, I've got it under control. 2 more days to go, 4.5 weeks into the program, big shift, continue to improve. Now, I would like to add that when I do get the pain, when it does kick in, I use the principles that I've been learning, I apply those, and they help. They will usually get the pain under control once it kicks in or comes in a bit. Sometimes it doesn't happen straight away, sometimes it might take a couple of hours, but it nearly always kicks in. Now, again, is that coincidence? Possibly. But what's the most likely thing? I tell you what, there's nothing more obvious than pain. And when you can control your pain by your faith and your mind, then it's very profound. So, coming back to Canon Jim Glennon in his book, and I did get off the subject there, but I just wanted to grab your attention, and go back. Now, what Canon Jim Glennon, I'll just call him, the minister or whatever, anyway, never mind. What he did, when these ticked the main boxes for me, now you might have different boxes, that's fine, so these were my boxes. When he was young, he used to suffer with severe anxiety and depression. And when he became a minister, he would still get it, and it would shut him down, meaning he couldn't do anything for days until he recovered. He thought, this is no God, no good, Freudian slip. I've got to find a way to solve this. And so what he did, he began to appeal to God and to the Bible to find solutions to his problem. And he was able to find those solutions, apply them, and heal himself. So the anxiety and the depression was completely cured. He also had a problem called iritis, which is a recurring infection of the eye, the one eye, that he used to get regularly, the same month every year. I think it might have been October, for some reason. I don't know what it was. But virtually the same month every year, he'd get this attack of iritis. So he used the same principles or techniques on the eye, and he cured the eye. Doesn't come back anymore. So I thought, oh, great, that's somebody who's used it themselves. They're not just talking theory. They've actually applied it themselves. Big test. Perhaps the biggest box. Second thing he did, he realized that this was so helpful to him, maybe it would help some other people. Being a minister, naturally, wanted to help people. So he went to his leaders and he said, look, I want to give these discussions or lectures or sermons on what I've learned. They weren't very happy. They weren't cooperative. And he maintains this, and this just marks the man to me, that he believed that his leaders, and they've confirmed that, were more concerned about salvation of the soul than they were of meeting people at their point of need. What I mean by point of need is whatever issue or problem is bothering them at that time. He recognized that salvation is important to Christianity, of course it is. It's fundamental. But he also recognized how important it was to help people with their problems at that time. But he didn't get much support, and I guess maybe they thought him as a rebel. But he persuaded them to let him do a one-night sermon in St Andrew's Cathedral in Sydney, which is where he was stationed. So some of you will know that. And so he decided every Wednesday night he would do a talk or a sermon on what he'd learned from the Bible and from God about healing yourself. And I think from the beginning he got about 10 ladies, probably the faithful, and it eventually grew where they couldn't fit any more people in the cathedral, and expanded from there to be a mail order talk where they would record his talks and write them up and type them up and send them out before the days of the internet. Just Jim Glennon's passed away now in his 80s, so he's gone. And the book by, I think it's Sid Eves, it's just come to me now, it's called A Ministry of Healing. But Jim Cannon has wrote a couple of books, which we'll give you the information on those at another time or in a different place. Because The Healing is Within You, I think, is one of them. The Healing is Within You by Jim Glennon. These books are very hard to get, by the way. One of them, Your Healing is Within You, I think I've ordered mine from Amazon, and a friend of mine has sourced some on eBay. So you can always go there if you're impatient to get ahead of me. That's fine. All right, so then what he did, because he was getting success with the people that were applying his teachings, they raised some money and they bought a leisure centre that was previously owned by nuns, and it was called the Golden Grove. You can look it up; it's still around. Golden Grove in Newtown, Sydney. And what they did, they would transport cancer patients there every weekend, put them in-house with their carers, and they would teach them these principles because they felt that the longer they had to work with them, the better the results would be, and that was the case. And so he was getting results with people with cancer and terminal cancer. They were expected to die. People were getting better, but not just with cancer, but with other incurable diseases, people that were applying these methods. So he wasn't healing them himself. He was teaching them how they could take responsibility themselves, because basically that's how they've gotten sick most of the time. It's because of the way they've led their lives, or because of what they've inherited, or a whole heap of reasons. But it's putting the responsibility back on the individual. So he would teach them what they could do to help themselves. That ticked the big box for me, that he was teaching them how to help themselves. The other big box that was ticked was, guess what? It worked. It worked where all else was failing. So that to me was really got my attention. That's what motivated me to think, I got to do this. You know, this can help others. It's going to be able to help me. And I've already told you the result that I got with it. The other thing, the other box that it ticked is what I liked, was the fact that he would use medical knowledge and philosophy to help people understand his methods. And of course, that naturally being not a medical professional, I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm obviously in the health profession. So again, that ticked a big box for me. And I want to give you an example. And he quotes a book by Carl Simonton, which I have a copy of, called Getting Well Again. I was going to show it to you, but I forgot to get it. It's confession time. And Dr. Carl Simonton is a medical oncologist. That means he specializes in cancer, medical doctor. And he's got a center in America, and it's been around a long, long time. I read his book a long, long time ago. And he teaches people how to use their mind to visualize themselves being healed, and gets very good results. Better than the average medical results, way better. And so he maintains, in his opinion, it's not whether he's right or wrong, I'm trying to give you an example here, which we'll get to in a moment. He maintains that the number one cause, the primary cause, there are others, but the primary cause of cancer is some form of stress or crisis 6 to 18 months before the cancer appears. Now that could be very important for some of you listening. What do you think your big crises or major stress events have been in your life, and how have they affected you? So you can extend that even further. That's what he maintained. Now, this is Jim Glennon quoting this medical doctor, okay? We'll get to the point in a moment. He also quotes another doctor, a researcher called Hans Selye, professor, and he wrote what's called the classic on stress. It's called the Stress of Life. It's a thick book, and I've read that too, and it's a very old book. It's classic, and a lot of medical professionals use it because he did a lot of research, and he maintains that the number one cause of stress is, guess what? Give you a moment to think about what you think the number one cause of stress might be. Right, now, in his opinion, but he's a medical profession, it's resentment. Now that may or may not apply to you, but I think we all have it. And that's certainly when I'm going through my crisis, I suspect I may resent God in some ways. Maybe resentment's a strong word, but it certainly affects my relationship with it. So here am I, needing to deal with my problem, and I'm getting more resentment. It doesn't work, does it? It doesn't help. Even towards God, it could be the solution, and I'm resenting, God not helping me. So he maintains it was resentment. Now, from a Christianity point of view, and maybe even from a non-Christianity or non-spiritual point of view, what do you think is the solution for resentment? Forgiveness. And that is a spiritual principle, to forgive. So any harm or hurt or insult that you may have had in your life from anyone or anything, you've got to let it go. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that it could be subconscious. You may not be aware of it. Now, in my clinic, I mentioned we treat a lot of emotional, mental issues. And we have a method called biocybernetics. And what we do is we deliberately tap into the subconscious mind to see if there are any issues there that need to be released, like resentment, like unforgiveness, like stress, like tension, like worry, like insecurity, like vulnerability, like fear, so all these things we have a way of testing, muscle testing, to see if the patient is carrying any of these erroneous programs in their subconscious that they may not even be aware of that are affecting them. And then we teach them, we help them release them, and we teach them how to release them themselves. Then we also go in and we test to see where they may have a block to a positive. Let's say you find it difficult to forgive, so there may be a block there. So no matter how much you say it, it may be difficult to achieve it because there's a block there for whatever reason. It could be a defense mechanism. It could be because your subconscious thinks that you're going to be better off not forgiving the person because they might come back and hurt you again. It's a protection mechanism. So it doesn't necessarily make sense. The subconscious doesn't do that. Subconscious is just there to protect you in its wisdom, and it isn't always right. And so we have a way of releasing that block to the forgiveness and then programming the forgiveness in. So we've been doing this for a long time. So naturally that struck a note with me, and I thought, he's really onto something here. So forgiveness is very much a spiritual principle, and God says that you must forgive or he won't forgive you. Now, because God is a God of law as well as mercy, I just wonder, my question in my mind, is it because he can't forgive you? Because if you're not forgiving others, how's he going to be able to help you? Because you've got resentment, which is breaking a law. So God can't work against law. He's got to work within law. So he's a God of law and justice. And so you have to learn what you need to do so God can actually work the way that he's meant to work through justice and law. He also works with mercy. We need to understand that, but he's a God of justice. And we have to have justice in the universe. We have to have law in the universe. Otherwise nothing would exist. Nothing could exist. So God has to be a God of law to be able to support the universe and to support everything. But by the law, we I don't want to get too much into this, but we also need mercy as well, and that's why we had a Saviour who did what he did so we can escape the effects or the consequences of breaking laws, whether we do it knowingly or unknowingly. So God provided a way where we could escape the demands of justice through what Jesus did by going through the suffering and giving his life and paying the price of all our pain, all our suffering. So he paid that price on conditions, which I won't get into here, on certain conditions, that we can claim that freedom from the demands of justice through Jesus Christ. That's what Christianity is about. But that's not for everybody, as I said at the beginning, so I want to honour that. Okay, so the lessons learned for me, I think I've already mentioned those, okay? And, he healed himself. He helped others to heal. I think he was getting I've got some in the back of my mind. I'm going to have to check this out, but something like an 85% success rate. Better than two. Yes, in the cancer retreat, the success rate is 2%. Normally, medically, depends on the cancer, of course. Sometimes it can be more than that. And he claims 85% success rate. I'm pretty sure that's accurate, but no, I might have to follow up on that. All right, now, so for me, I had to learn, as I said, one of it was the swivel chair technique, to, when I had my problem, to use it to turn me towards God, closer to God, rather than further away from Him. The other lesson I had to learn was how to learn how to have faith to be healed. What do I need to do to activate that gift, that healing gift in my life? What can I do to create more faith to be healed? And there's a number of things that I had to practice and I had to do, and a lot of it is controlling your thinking and controlling your mind and your emotions as well. So that's a big part of it. And of course, that's what we do with the biocybernetics. We're teaching people how to use their minds properly, because it's very, very powerful. The mind is really the key to everything. And so by learning how to, and that's what faith is really about as well, not just faith in God or faith in Christ, it's about how you use your mind and what you think about during the day and what you feel. So that is key. So those were the two lessons, and of course that's what I've been applying. Now, did I know that before? Yes, of course I did. Did I know it enough? No. Did I understand it enough? No. Did I apply it enough? No. And that's what I did, and that's when I got the turnaround. Now, just one point with God, people say, why does He allow us to suffer, and why is there so much pain and suffering in the world? And I ask that same question. It's still, I don't always agree with everything God does. I don't always understand everything God does. And I've said that so many times. But think of the parent-child relationship. Do you give the child everything it wants? Of course you don't. You give the child what you think is best for the child, and sometimes you have to deny the child in its best interests. You don't let the child just have its own way, because that will not be in the child's best interest. And so God often allows things to happen to us because He knows it's in our best interests. Now I question that sometimes. I do. I really do. But that's the basic theory, that God allows these things to happen, gives us the freedom to choose, and often we make wrong choices. Sometimes we suffer because of other people's choices. We live in a world where people do the wrong things and we can be affected by that. But in all of that, God has provided a plan for us to help us, regardless of what's happening, regardless. Now, again, without going, I'm just deliberating under how much, now, I think I've probably said enough to whet your appetite. And so what I've decided to do is to, as you're probably aware, I'm going to conduct a course. The course will be online initially. I may do one live. That depends. Obviously, that would be more effective. But I will certainly do one online. I don't know yet. I'm guessing every 2 weeks or so. And it's free. And what you'll need to do, obviously, register. So we can send you the Zoom link, and all you do, you come on at the right time, on the right day, and away we go. I anticipate it may last an hour, but that's difficult to say. There will be an opportunity to ask questions, to participate, to make comments, to give reports for people who are actually using the methods and getting results, and there'll be like a community there that we can all support each other. And yes, it will be obviously spiritual based. Now, just as an add-on, I do have other courses. I do have a free course on how to train your mind. It's on the Biocybernetics. It's free. You can access it. It's a home study course, and we send you information regularly where you practice yourself, and it gives you the instructions on how you can begin to change your subconscious, change the way you think. That's free. So if you're not into God and you don't want a God spiritual based program, that's okay too. I have an alternative for that, which I think I mentioned in my email to you. You just send me an email, tell me you want to do this course instead or as well, because you don't need to do the two, because I'm going to include it anywhere in our spiritual course, spiritual healing course. I'll include it, so you don't need to do both. But if you don't want to do the spiritual healing course, that's another option for you, just so I show my respect for where you're at with your beliefs and still want to be able to help you regardless. So I hope that's been helpful for you. It's obviously gone a lot longer than I thought. Apologise for that. I thought it would be a very quick, short video, but once I get going, it's hard to stop. So hopefully it's been productive and profitable for you, and I really look forward to you joining me on the course and allowing me the opportunity to see if we can really make a big difference in your life. So thank you very much, and I mean this in all the sincerity of my heart. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you. Bye.